Well, we're back in the, or still in the St. George area.
Yeah, Washington County.
This is Hurricane.
Right.
Don't say hurricane.
No, it's Hurricane.
Hurricane, they'll get mad at you. Yeah. Aptly named.
Right.
That's the hurricane cliffs and stuff up there.
Yep. Beautiful place.
Anyway, we're here to visit our old friend Jim. He's not old. I've known him.
We've just been friends forever.
You know, he's the original Toy Man.
He is. He
is.
is.
I wrote a script for a film called Toy Man, based on Jim Keeler's life.
Yes.
Anyway, when I started up the YouTube channel years ago, I just thought Toy Man's a great name.
Yes, it is.
So I'll keep it.
Absolutely.
Anyway, this is Jim pointing out to us the various species of birds that live in the cliffs above his house here.
Right, and I just love those cliffs. Honestly, they're beautiful.
Oh, this whole part of the world is so amazingly beautiful. Anyway, Jim's been involved in models.
Right.
Mostly plastic models his whole life.
Right.
I mean, his whole life.
Literally his whole life.
He's still building plastic models. This is his shop. And he graciously agreed to give us the chef's tour of the kitchen, as it were. Now, there's a bunch of models he's built scattered around here. But I know your first encounter was with Twirltown Toys.
Yes, I think all of us had the Twirltown. Well, it was just a brand of toy, like cheap Japanese toys.
And Jim worked for Western Toy at that time, and he was the distributor for this stuff.
Right, and you just like 10, 15 cents and go to the local store and buy
It was
something.
just those fun little junky toys.
I loved it, yeah.
We did that show on the Toy District.
Exactly.
Now, Jim always said his boss was a clown.
Yeah.
And that's why. So by way of quick history here, Jim started building models when he was just a little kid, as did we all.
Right.
It was a national pastime.
Right.
But he was very, very, very good at it and got a lot of national notoriety just as a teenager. And he would build these incredible models and enter them, finally working his way up to big national competitions and winning a lot of national competitions and getting a lot of write-ups in the magazines.
That is cool.
And here in the garage is some of his various trophies from that part of his life.
Nice.
But he got the attention of a couple of the big model companies, most notably Revell.
Right.
And they started to induct him into their company while he was still in high school. And at the moment he got his high school diploma, he also got on an airplane and headed for Los Angeles and went to work as the car developer for Revell Models.
Isn't that wild? That is just, what?
Yeah, talk about the dream job. Now, he worked with this character,
Oh,
Ed Big Daddy Roth.
that has to figure.
That has to figure. Well, as part of his job, he had to work with all these car designers. This is Ed's wife.
Right.
Eileen. Now you go back.
Yeah, Eileen and I go way back.
Way. So who knew that all these paths would cross in so many different ways? But Jim worked on the development of a lot of the Ed Roth models.
Isn't that crazy? I probably looked at them as a kid.
Oh, I built them all as a kid.
Yeah.
I certainly never knew I'd know Ed or Jim or Eileen or any of this stuff.
Exactly.
And I was literally, Ed Big Daddy Roth was my favorite person in the whole world.
Right, once you're introduced to him, there it is.
I wanted to be just like him. And that's not an exaggeration. I wanted to be Ed Big Daddy Roth.
Yeah.
He made that kind of an impression on me. Anyway, what Jim's involvement in all of this was to travel around to the different car builders and Ed and these people and pick out what cars they wanted to do as models and then present that to Revell and say, I think if we do The Road Agent by Ed Big Daddy Roth, that'll be a popular model.
Right.
And it was.
Oh, of course.
Now, he also developed these parts packs.
Oh, neat.
And this was a really great thing for Revell because the parts pack sold for 50 cents.
Ah.
They cost nothing to develop. A plastic model kit would sell for $2.
Right.
And that would cost, $1 million to develop. One of these things was just a single tree, and it sold for 50 cents.
Well, there you go.
And and Revell couldn't make them fast enough.
I'll bet.
So anyway, just recently, Atlantis Models, who's been buying up all of the old original molds for a lot of this stuff, contacted Jim, just like it happened back in high school, and they said, wouldn't you like to take your parts packs that you developed back in 1960 and let's turn those into cars and put them on the market as Keeler's Kustoms?
Well, isn't that awesome?
Isn't that just...
What?
It's the most spectacular thing I've heard in a long, long time.
These are all kits that I've made up using the old Revell custom car parts tooling that I designed in 1960. So they called me in the spring and said, and I'd met them at the hobby show in Denver a couple years ago, and we've stayed in close contact. And so they called me in the spring and said, we'd like you to design a whole bunch of kits using all the custom car parts tooling that we have, and they don't have all of it, but they have part of it. And then we're going through the tooling and cleaning stuff up where we can. But the custom car parts stuff, I mean, these things, this stuff is like amazing.
Look at that.
So these are shots off the
These
same
are test
molds.
shots,
Shots.
off the original molds.
Look how shiny and clean and perfect.
So
Yeah.
they've been restored, or are those
No,
the
that's
condition
that's
that they're
the
in?
condition they were in. Yeah.
So are they going to do any more polishing on the molds? do you
Where we
think?
have to, where we have to.
Because these look
we
pretty
have
damn
to.
good. just
This
like
is how they
that.
came right out.
Yeah.
Oh, compared to
Yep.
some of the models I've bought lately.
Oh,
Yeah.
that Camaro that she
Oh.
bought, and it's been,
It took
re-released
three
and
tries.
re-released. I've never seen molds
No,
in
that
worse
was
shape.
horrible.
And
Never.
look at the detail on that Ford engine.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, the molds for that Camaro were
Yeah,
shot
they're trash.
20 years ago,
Yeah.
and they're still selling the car.
Yeah, I know.
It's just absolutely.
I don't understand what round two is doing with some of this stuff. They've got all this tooling, and they could be doing some really creative things with
Excuse
it,
me.
and they're not.
Well, and they're not taking care of the molds.
No, you
They're
don't.
just letting the molds get destroyed, and it's just
Well,
tragic.
the flash, it was afterward, and it was just like, I would trim everything, and still nothing would fit right.
This is the Buick engine. This is the same engine that Steve Scott used in the Uncertainty,
Okay.
and that's a car that I named.
The uncertainty.
Uncertainty. When I was working for Revell, of course, my job was to go find cars to make model kits of, and so I heard about his car, and I drove out to see him, and he had it all finished or nearly finished, and it was in his garage there. And so I went in the garage, and he had a big, huge 4x8 blackboard where he kept all his notes. And there was a big sign on it in chalk that said, "Name the car and get $50." Okay, and I said, "Is that deal still on?" And he says, "Yeah, it is." And I said, "I think you should call it the Certainty." And he says, "Uncertainty," and whipped out his wallet and gave me $25.
There it is.
And that's how
50, yeah.
that's how the car got its name.
Uncertainty.
Yeah, right. Every kit will come with 2 complete engines, so you get, you'd be able to build it with either engine. And this is the 27T, and I scratch built this and I put in the aluminum bucket seats,
Yeah.
Those are neat.
aluminum interior and stuff.
Whoa!
And I had,
Don't lose your wheels.
yeah. And my rule is I can't pick anything up with my left hand, because when I drop it, then I try to grab it,
Yeah.
and then I pull my shoulder.
Not
So-
good. Yeah.
And but the engines, then they had the pistons and everything in them,
Yeah.
Isn't that
and the
wild?
valve gear,
Reminds me of the Aurora,
racing scenes.
the racing scenes. Those were
Yeah.
so amazing.
But these were, so every one of these models will have 2 complete engines, and there will be about
And spark plug wires.
and they all come with the wiring. And notice that
I tried doing that. That was
this is a special 30 gauge wire that I
Uh-huh.
found from a company in New York. and there's actual metal in it, and you can bend it and shape it.
Nice.
I mean, it's gorgeous stuff.
It is. I'm just
really
envious.
And that'll come with the kit.
And every kit will have 6 to 12 inches. So here's the
Yeah. You see, my Camaro did not.
wire here.
There's the wire.
This is actually 32 gauge wire here.
Oh yeah.
This is
That's what I needed for my Camaro.
Yeah.
this is
when
the
I
30
did that
gauge
one.
here.
Oh wow. That's like a hair.
Yeah. But notice you can bend it at
Yeah.
the right angles and stuff.
Oh. Yes, I didn't have anything quite that. I was just noticing on my Camaro when I put that together, I just didn't want the distributor and all that sitting there without its equipment on there.
This is why I gave up the smaller scales.
The rotor caps.
I can't even see that yet.
Yeah.
I manipulate it with my fingers.
Well, I can only see it with the magnifying
Big
glasses that I
magnifying.
wear, yeah, and bright lights. So, but this one here is, we took the chassis from the Tweety Pie kit
Okay.
and the engine and stuff.
Did you get Ed's permission for that?
I do have Ed's permission, yes.
Good.
I've been working with her,
Absolutely.
yeah. So I scratch built this out of styrene in 2 days.
Nice.
And so that'll be a nice C-cab truck
Look at that.
on there when it's ready to go.
Now the C cab won't come with the kit though, right? That's just something.
No,
you
that'll
do
be in the
for yourself.
kit. No, it'll be a C-cab
So
truck.
they're going to do the
Yeah, we're
tooling
going to
for
do the
that.
tooling
then?
for that, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
that'll come a little bit later. And then we've got the Moon Eyes Dragster,
Nice.
which we'll be putting out also as a Keeler's Customs. And this is the Kent Fuller chassis here. And that's scale. And this was all this tooling, this was all done starting in 1961.
Nice.
And nobody has beat it since. So then we're going to reissue the Tri-5 Chevys. So 55, 56 Nomad, 57 Nomad, 57 hardtop, and then each of these on the box art will be done. And I'm the art director on the box art. And I went up to the Ratfink reunion in the spring and looking for an artist to do my box art, and found 2 guys actually. And one guy lived in Ogden, and every day of the show he'd bring out another print and put it up. And so on the 3rd day of the show, and I'd been watching all this, he came up and he put this one print of a 32 Ford Roadster up there, and I thought, that's my man.
Yeah.
So I went and talked to him, and we set it all up. And so he's doing the box art,
Nice.
illustrations for all of this stuff. And I'm having a blast. Each one will be at a famous drag strip
Nice.
or location.
Nice.
And the 23T Roadster, which is still in the box. There's more of these in the box I haven't got out yet. The 23T Roadster will have like a patriotic paint theme on it, and it will have a banner up above it for the Woodward Dream Cruise. Okay. And then the 55 Chevy will be at either a Sonic or a Bob's Drive-In with the logos and everything. This is kind of like the patriotic theme that'll be on the side of the 23T.
Nice.
And I'm working with a decal artist in California, who is the son of the man who did the airplane model,
Okay.
Lloyd Jones, and he was the man I worked with at Revell. He was Revell's airplane man, and I was their car guy. And we became really, really good friends. And he passed away last year. And so we had a memorial service for him just a month ago now. And so we drove down to California for that. But his son is the one that designs the AFX cars, the bodies for them, for Tommy. And he also does all this decal stuff. So and this piece right here, this is the very first model car kit I ever did. 1952 or 53 from Revell, the
Yeah.
Highway Pioneers.
Highway Pioneers. All those
And
kits.
if you see the roof, it's actually textured. And I knew from a child with these things cruising around our neighborhood in Salt Lake when I was little, that these kind of cars didn't have shiny roofs.
Right.
So I got some dope, put it on the top, and I put Kleenex on there and painted it. So, and this was my very first model kit, so they were customized from the beginning.
Nice.
And then when I came back from New York in 1974, 75, whenever it was, I went to my mother's house, and she had me get some stuff out of the basement. And this was buried under the dirt in the basement, and I tripped over it. And so I got it back.
That's awesome.
And it's made of acetate.
Yeah, you can see that it's that organic material.
Hand paintbrushes, but I didn't think that was too bad for...
No, not even. No.
How old were you?
I would have been 9 or 10 when I did that. But, and I lived with Ed Roth for 6 weeks. When I first moved to LA to work for Revell, I was 18 years old and coming up from San Diego, 150 miles south, and I'd never had an apartment. I'd never lived alone. I didn't know anything about it. And I told Ed, I says, I'm really worried about moving up here. I don't know anything, and I don't feel safe in LA, you know. He says, well, that's not a problem. He says, just come live with us. So for 6 weeks, I lived with Ed Roth and his family.
Wow.
And I'll tell you, that was one wild 6 weeks.
I'll bet it was.
Every dinner was like something out of a movie.
Yeah.
It was just with his crazy kids.
Imagine.
And then we were up till midnight every night out doing stunts and stuff in the street and goofing off and stealing things. And I mean, you know, it was like when I'm living in Salt Lake there, in North Salt Lake, and Ed moved to Manti. Every time he came to Salt Lake to buy parts or paint or whatever, he would come to my house and visit, and we'd go have lunch at the Greek restaurant up on Highway 89. And then he would always draw big drawings for the kids. So we've got all these drawings that Ed did.
Wow.
And at the last auction they had those drawings like those that other people submitted were selling for $6,000 a piece.
At least.
At least.
He told that great story that when he was doing the car shows, he was doing the leather jackets and the sweatshirts and I guess some tees, but most people wanted a little heavier, and mostly what they wanted were the bomber jackets because, you know, World War II. So he'd paint their car on the back of the bomber jacket, but then they wanted to be standing next to the car.
Yeah.
So he'd do kind of a caricature of them, but just kind of a caricature. And he said there was this one guy that was hounding him. He didn't want to do an artwork for the guy, and the guy would not leave him alone.
Who was it?
And so he said, and the guy was hanging around till after closing, and he said, okay, I'll do it. And he painted the guy's car on a leather jacket, I think a leather jacket. And then he said he put bug eyes on him and flies buzzing around his head and scars across his forehead. And he said the next day the line was completely across the show. Can you do me with flies and like really snarly teeth?
Well, he did. When I started working at Revell, I had been riding bicycles for about 3 years on long distance trips, like from Cedar City to the Grand Canyon.
Holy cow.
Okay, or Cedar City to here. And I came up on the train from California to do that. So I was still riding bikes and doing everything. So he did a sweatshirt for me when we were in San Diego. And this was right after I first met him. I met him when I was 15 at the car shows. And so, and I went to all the shows all over Southern California. So anyway, he did this drawing of me, you know, and there's pus coming out of my zits.
Yeah.
You know, and flies. It was just incredible. And I was in my shop one day on Pierpont, and I was working on it had a hardwood floor, wooden hardwood floor, and I spilled a gallon of paint. And I just reached for the nearest whatever, and I had grabbed my sweatshirt, and I ruined it. I wish I had that.
Yeah.
It was just incredible. But he was just so cool, and he was just an amazing friend. When he died, I went into this deep depression from that. Went to the funeral and everything, and I had spoken to him just before he died. And of course, didn't know anything was going to happen.
Nobody was wrong.
Yeah, no, nothing was wrong. So we had a great time together, and
Yeah, I didn't even know that Ed Roth was Ed Roth. Because when he married Eileen, she'd been married to the Breathwaite and then a Frishnet.
yeah.
And then I heard she was divorced. Because I worked with her at the plant, too,
Yeah,
the
right.
turkey processing plant.
Yeah.
So I hear she marries this Roth that's got all this money. And I'd seen him. I'd seen the two of them.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was that Ed
Well,
Roth. I
they-
mean, it's like,
yeah.
I was like,
They-
Ed Roth.
Yeah, they hit it off.
Yeah.
We drove down there to go to the hobby show, and so I called. Ed Roth was working at and Knott's Berry Farm. So I called him on the phone while I was down there and see how he was doing. And he says, well, I'm doing okay. He says, I just joined your church. And I said, you joined a church? And he says, no. He says, I joined your church. And I'm going, no. I says, they're not even going to accept you.
Yeah.
He says, no, seriously, I really did. I've been reading the Book of Mormon, and I believe it's true. And so he subsequently went through all his artwork and all his everything, and he took out all the beer cans and replaced them with ice cream cones.
Yeah. And guns.
And he got
rid of the guns.
Yeah.
And he got rid of the beer cans.
Yeah.
And he substituted ice cream cones and his favorite banana splits.
Yeah, and so anyway, I talking to him on the phone, I couldn't believe it, and he says, I need to tell you something. I said, what's that? And he says, well, you hung around in my shop all those years you were down here working for Revell, and all the work we did together to do my cars. He used to give me rides in those cars. We got a ride in the Beatnik Bandit with the dome open, and he says, but he says, every time you come in, I'd offer you a beer. And every single time you refused to take it. And he says, it made an impression on me. And that was a factor. And I'm going, I couldn't believe it. So then, about a year later, he calls me on the phone. And he says, we're moving to Utah. And he'd remarried, Beverly was her name. And he says, could you meet me there in wherever we were going to do it and help me find a house? So he drove up, and we stayed at a hotel down there and drove all over the place and looking at houses, and found him a house. And so he and Bev moved up here. And then a year later, 2 years later, I'm at the Oakland Roadster Show when it was still in Oakland. And Ed was there, and everything was cool on Friday night. Saturday, I went past his booth, and he was just sitting there, and he wasn't even moving. And I thought something was really wrong. I went over and I said, okay? And he says, no. I said, well, what's going on? Tell me, do we need an ambulance or something? He says, no. He says, Bev just called me on the phone, and she moved out and took everything. So that was the beginning of the end for that. And then he met her, the new gal.
Eileen.
Yeah,
Which
Eileen.
I have a story with her.
Yeah, oh, do you really?
Yeah, she was married. She was the sister-in-law to my aunt, my dad's sister. Really? She was a Breathwaite.
I'll be darned.
And then she went through a couple bad marriages, and then they met. So yeah, I've known Eileen forever. Yeah, isn't that something? Yeah.
No, it's been fantastic. I have been incredibly blessed to have been involved in the hobby industry since I was 18 years old. They hired me when I was 18.
Wow.
At Revell, and to be able to go back now and do this over again is like totally amazing. So the first kit will be shipped next month, and then we're going to do a whole bunch more.
Well, anyway, one more thing to do while we were down here at the Color Country Model Railroad Club Open House.
Right.
Which has nothing to do with the Model Railroad Club Open House, but is spectacular beyond all belief. The chance to get caught up with Jim here. This was just really, really cool and fun. And we've been talking to him about doing this forever. And,
Right.
And we made it. We finally made it. Well, if you haven't been over to the channel, please pop over to the channel. And if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe by clicking on the famous blue button right there. The blue button. Well, we're not sure how you found this video on the internet. We hope you didn't find it boring, and we will see you here on Tuesday with something else interesting and fun and different. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.